Okay, good morning. This is Karl F. Rose, recording from Bedford on Monday, December 16th, 2019. And before we get going on this podcast, let's get my intro music here. Okay. Now I got to get my disclaimer. If you are 13 years or under, please leave this podcast now. And because this is not child content. Okay, I should have done the alarm clock first, but whatever. We're recording. Let's get this going. It was a great game. And let me just get this in. Yes, it was a great game. So we will do, okay. No. Okay. We'll go back. Okay. Fine. We'll just go, forget it. I can't do the effects that I wanted to do for whatever reason. Anyway, it started out, the referees, as usual, were trying to hand the game to Pittsburgh, but Buffalo would have none of it. There was a bogus face mask call near the beginning of the game, which if they did call, but Pittsburgh had it in scoring position, but Buffalo's defense stepped up. They only held them to a field goal. That made it 7-3. And there were some other calls. Now, I have to admit that the referees did make some really screwy calls going against Pittsburgh. There was actually a critical one near the end of the game. But there was a one where the Bills receiver actually caught the ball. But even if he didn't, it was a pass interference. Buffalo would have got the ball there anyway. But when I looked at it, that was not. And if I'm sure Tomlin would have thrown the challenge flag if the Buffalo Bills player had not caught the ball, because that was not pass interference. So I don't know what's going on with the refs. They're still screwing up. And then there was one call. There was a false start with the center popped his head up. That was a good false start on the fourth down. It drew Buffalo off sides, but it was a false start, so it moved back farther. They had to punt. I want to get all this ref stuff out of the way. Then there was another false start, very critical on Pittsburgh. So I will say the guy's knee twitched a little bit. I thought that was kind of ticky-tack. It forced Buffalo to jump offside. Personally, I thought this call, instead of being technically it was a false start, but I would have called it the other way. I would have called it an offside on Buffalo that would have given Pittsburgh a first down and possibly tying the game. But that's just my thoughts. So the referees are still at it. Bad calls, both for bad calls against Pittsburgh and or bad calls against Buffalo. So, but what irritates me more about the game, probably bugged me the most, and this is the NFL in general. The announcers. I think the next time I see, because I really don't like the Steelers. I haven't liked them since 1972. With the Immaculate Conception where Franco Harris ran and beat the Raiders in a playoff game. But that's besides the point. The problem is the announcers. They keep throughout the entire game. Yes, they were saying things about Buffalo, but they were focusing more on Buffalo's flaws. And yes, does Buffalo have flaws? Yes, they have flaws. Is Josh Allen inaccurate on his throws? Yes, he is. He's not the top-notch quarterback, but he's only 2 years in the league. And honestly, if I was going to compare quarterbacks, I think this third-string quarterback on Pittsburgh is probably just as good as Josh Allen. He would be the third string quarterback on Pittsburgh. This Hodges guy, Ducky, he would start. He would start. He could start for the Lions. He could start for Miami. He could start for Jacksonville. He could start for the New York Giants. This guy is that good. So you got to give Pittsburgh credit. And I think if they would have accurately called the play late in the game instead of a false start on Pittsburgh and accurately called it an offside on Buffalo, which would have given Pittsburgh a first down, they may have tied the game, and it probably would have went into overtime, and who knows what would have happened. But it's just the announcers. It's annoying. I'm going to have to mute them next time because the entire game they were beefing up Pittsburgh, which drove me nuts. But it was a good game. Fortunately, the game was not decided by a blown referee call. Hodges just made mistakes near the end. Those last two interceptions cost Pittsburgh the game. He could have, if he would have thrown to Washington, he made an error. He threw it to the other guy, and that was interception number one. Washington was wide open in the end zone. I don't know what Buffalo was doing, but he didn't see it. He could have easily tied the game with that. But that's the could have, would have, should have. It was a good game. It was actually it was a playoff game, and I suspect that Buffalo and Pittsburgh will see each other again in the playoffs, and I'm really scared about that because Mike Tomlin is a veteran coach. He's finally got a chance to see all of Buffalo's flaws and that sort of thing. If they meet in the playoffs, whether it's in Buffalo or whether it's in Pittsburgh, I'm going to favor the Steelers on that because Tomlin is not going to lose to Buffalo twice. That's just not going to happen. He's not that kind. No, he won't. He just won't. They will besides, they'll probably have Schuster back, and they will have more weapons, and their defense will be kind of ticked off about the game, and it'll be rough. But yeah, this is a great game. It was a good game. At least it wasn't decided by refs. Yes, they made bad calls throughout the game. They made bad calls on both sides of the ball. Buffalo's in the playoffs, and they better take notes, and they better understand how Pittsburgh plays because I see them playing again. And if they don't get their act together, they will lose the second time around, and Pittsburgh will advance. That's just the way I see it. This is the first time since 1999 they've have a 10-win season. This is good. Now next week, now they got that out of the way. They need to win the next two games. They need to beat Patriots next Saturday. Then they need to beat the Jets, and then they got to hope that the Miami Dolphins beat the Patriots in the final game of the season, providing Buffalo wins their last two games. And then Buffalo wins the division. Anyway, I just wanted to get this podcast out, and let's go with end with this. Okay, we will see you next time, and have a good week. And I will do a podcast, probably a Christmas podcast, because next Monday I'll be before Christmas. So I'll do probably more of a holiday-themed podcast. We will talk to you next week.